네. Hi. Hey folks, sorry I'm just a minute late here. We're supposed to have a lockdown drill in a few minutes, and I had to like get my door relocked and put paper over my window and stuff. Um, y'all don't have to do anything. I just have to, I guess I'll talk you through it when we do it, but you all pretty much know what to do at this point anyway. All right, let's see. We don't have Jordan yet. Should go back and check my attendance from yesterday and make sure that I marked him present. We do have Lucas. And we have Emily. Okay, we're only missing Jordan. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, I kind of told y'all about this yesterday. Oh, here comes Jordan. Let me go ahead and fix that then. Present. Okay, on Canvas, I uploaded a couple of new things, but y'all are looking at voice lessons, imagery 2. I'll just, even though you can look at it on your own, I'm still going to share my screen with you for a sec here. You're going to write a paragraph, roughly, I would say 4 to 7 sentences. Anywhere in that is good. Where you capture 2 different sounds at a sporting or musical event. In your paragraph, try to imitate the sounds themselves with your words. Don't worry about correct grammar, just focus on creating a vivid auditory image. Yesterday, we looked at the paragraph about the drums, and it had all of the auditory imagery that showed us what the different kinds of drums sounded like. So you're kind of trying to do that with your own sound, not drums. Although if you wanted to do drums, but somehow make it really different from the one we looked at, then that's okay. It's 9:12. Let me give y'all until about 9:20. And if we need more time than that, I'll give it to you. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'll turn off my video and mic for a few minutes and let y'all work on that. Okay, do we need any more time on that?
Yes, just a
Okay, I'll give you another couple minutes. Okay, so let's get those turned in as soon as possible if you haven't already. That's the last one that we'll have for this round. They'll all be graded together, the ones we've done so far. So by Monday, you'll have another grade in the grade book for that, or for those that y'all have done. Okay, so we're gonna read something together today. Yesterday we talked about memoirs, and sometimes a memoir is a whole book. We are gonna read a book that is a memoir, but there can also be shorter memoirs, like essays, short stories, pictures, like art. Songs can be memoirs. In fact, I've done stuff in the past with memoir songs, but I just didn't. I think it's harder to do when we're virtual, so I'm not going to worry about it. So we're going to read this thing together, and it is on Canvas. It's called Myth of a Latin Woman, and it's already published in the module for this week. And after we read it, we're just going to talk about everything that you would find on the SOAPStone page that we did for the Santa Ana Winds. Speaker, I gotta remember them all. Speaker, occasion, what's the A? I'll have to look it up. Tone, all those things. So we just be thinking about that as we're going. I'm actually
audience.
Audience, that's right. I'm going to open mine on my computer and then share it with you. So it can be a little bit bigger than you'd see it in Canvas. Okay, so this is not very long. I'm just going to read it together. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so you can read along with it if you want, but if you prefer just have it open in front of you, that's also fine. So Myth of the Latin Woman, or I Just Met a Girl Named Maria by Judith Ortiz Cofer. I'm going to turn my video off. On a bus trip to London from Oxford University, where I was earning some graduate credits one summer, a young man, obviously fresh from a pub, spotted me and, as if struck by inspiration, went down on his knees in the aisle. With both hands over his heart, he broke into an Irish tenor's rendition of Maria from West Side Story. My politely amused fellow passengers gave his lovely voice the round of gentle applause it deserved. Though I was not quite as amused, I managed my version of an English smile. No show of teeth, no extreme contortions of the facial muscles. I was at this time of my life practicing reserve and cool. Oh, that British control, how coveted it. How I coveted it? How coveted it. I've never noticed that that's not a complete sentence. I think it's supposed to be how I coveted it. But Maria had followed me to London, reminding me of a prime fact of my life. You can leave the island, master the English language, and travel as far. What is going on? Like, why am I missing letters? As far as you can? Can I move this? Is that a thing? No. Okay, sorry, this is weird. But if you're a Latina, especially one like me who so obviously belongs to Rita Moreno's gene pool, the island travels with you. And FYI, Rita Moreno was one of the actresses that was in West Side Story. This is sometimes a very good thing. It may win you that extra minute of someone's attention, but with some people, the same things that can make you an island, not so much a tropical paradise as an Alcatraz, a place nobody wants to visit. As a Puerto Rican girl growing up in the United States and wanting, like most children, to belong, I resented the stereotype that my Hispanic appearance called forth from many people I met. Our family lived in a large urban center in New Jersey during the 60s, where life was designed as a microcosm of my parents' casas on the island. We spoke in Spanish, we ate Puerto Rican food bought at the bodega, and we practiced strict Catholicism, complete with Saturday confession and Sunday mass at a church where our parents were accommodated into a 1-hour Spanish mass slot, performed by a Chinese priest trained as a missionary for Latin America. As a girl, I was kept under strict surveillance, since virtue and modesty were, by cultural equation, the same as family honor. As a teenager, I was instructed on how to behave as a proper señorita. But it was a conflicting message girls got, since the Puerto Rican mothers also encouraged their mothers to look and act like women and to dress in clothes our Anglo friends and their mothers found too mature for our age. It was and is cultural, yet I often felt humiliated when I appeared at an American friend's party wearing a dress more suitable to a semi-formal than to a playroom birthday celebration. At Puerto Rican festivities, neither the music nor the colors we wore could be too loud. I still experience a vague sense of letdown when I'm invited to a party, and it turns out to be a marathon conversation in hushed tones rather than a fiesta with salsa, laughter, and dancing. The kind of celebration I remember from my childhood. I remember career day in our high school when teachers told us to come dressed as if for a job interview. It quickly became obvious that to the barrio girls, dressing up sometimes meant wearing ornate jewelry and clothing that would be more appropriate by mainstream standards for the company Christmas party than as daily office attire. That morning, I had agonized in front of my closet trying to figure out what a career girl would wear because essentially, except for Marlo Thomas on TV, I had no models on which to base my decision. I knew how to dress for school. At the Catholic school I attended, we all wore uniforms. I knew how to dress for Sunday Mass, and I knew what dresses to wear for parties at my relatives' homes. Though I do not recall the precise details of my career day outfit, it must have been a composite of the above choices. But I remember a comment my friend, an Italian American, made in later years that coalesced my impressions of that day. She said that at the business school she was attending, at the business school she was attending, the Puerto Rican girls always stood out for wearing everything at once. She meant, of course, too much jewelry, too many accessories. On that day at school, we are simply made the negative models by the nuns, who were themselves not credible fashion experts to any of us. But it was painfully obvious to me that the others, in their tailored skirts and silk blouses, we must have seemed hopeless and vulgar. Though I now know that most adolescents feel out of step much of the time, I also know that for the Puerto Rican girls of my generation, that sense was intensified. The way our teachers and classmates looked at us that day in school was just a taste of the culture clash that awaited us in the real world, where prospective employers and men on the street would often misinterpret our tight skirts and jingling bracelets as a come on. Mixed cultural signals have perpetuated certain stereotypes. For example, that of the Hispanic woman as the hot tamale or sexual firebrand is a one-dimensional view that the media have found easy to promote. In their special vocabulary, advertisers have designated sizzling and smoldering as the adjectives of choice for describing not only the foods, but also the women of Latin America. From conversations in my house, I recall hearing about the harassment that Puerto Rican women endured in factories where the boss men talked to them as if sexual innuendo was all they understood, and worse, often gave them the choice of submitting to advances or being fired. It is custom, however, not chromosomes, that leads us to choose scarlet over pale pink. As young girls, we were influenced in our decisions about clothes and colors by the women, older sisters and mothers who had grown up on a tropical island where the natural environment was a riot of primary colors, where showing your skin was one way to keep cool as well as to look sexy. Most important of all, on the island, women perhaps felt freer to dress and move more provocatively, since in most cases they were protected by the traditions, mores, and laws of a Spanish Catholic system of morality and machismo, whose main rule was, "You may look at my sister, but if you touch her, I will kill you." The extended family and church structure could provide a young woman with a circle of safety in her small pueblo on the island. If a man wronged a girl, everyone would come in close to save her family honor. Everyone would close in, to save her family honor. This is what I've gleaned from my discussions as an adult with older Puerto Rican women. They've told me about dressing in their best party clothes on Saturday nights and going to the town's plaza to promenade with their girlfriends in front of the boys they liked. The males were then given an opportunity to admire the women and to express their admiration in the form of piropos, erotically charged street poems they composed on the spot. I have been subjected to a few piropos while visiting the island, and they can be outrageous, although custom dictates that they must never cross into obscenity. This ritual, as I understand it, also details a show of studied indifference on the woman's part. If she's decent, she must not acknowledge the man's impassioned words. So I do understand how things can be lost in translation. When a Puerto Rican girl dressed in her idea of what's attractive meets a man from the mainstream culture who's been trained to react to certain types of clothing as a sexual signal, a clash is likely to take place. The line I first heard based on this aspect of the myth happened when the boy who took me to my first formal dance leaned over to plant a sloppy, overeager kiss painfully on my mouth, and when I didn't respond with sufficient passion, said in a resentful tone, "I thought you Latin girls were supposed to mature early." My first instance of being thought of as a fruit or vegetable. I was supposed to ripen, not just grow into womanhood like other girls. It is surprising to some of my professional friends that some people, including those who should know better, still put others in their place. Though rarer, these incidents are still commonplace in my life. It happened to me most recently during a stay at a very classy metropolitan hotel favored by young professionals for all their weddings. Late one evening after the theater, as I walked towards my room with my new colleague, a woman with whom I was coordinating an arts program, a middle-aged man in a tuxedo, a young girl in satin and lace on his arm, stepped directly into our path. With his champagne glass extended toward me, he exclaimed, "Evita!" Our way blocked, my companion and I listened as the man half recited, half bellowed, "Don't cry for me, Argentina," which is from Evita. When he finished, the young girl said, "How about a round of applause for my daddy?" We complied, hoping this would bring this silly spectacle to a close. I was becoming aware that our little group was attracting the attention of the other guests. Daddy must have perceived this too, and he once more barred the way as we tried to walk past him. He began to sing a ditty to the tune of La Bamba, except the lyrics were about a girl named Maria, whose exploits all rhymed with her name and gonorrhea. The girl kept saying, "Oh, daddy," and looking at me with pleading eyes. She wanted me to laugh along with the others. My companion and I stood silently waiting for the man to end his offensive song. When he finished, I looked not at him, but at his daughter. I advised her calmly never to ask her father what he had done in the army. Then I walked between them into my room. My friend complimented me on my cool handling of the situation. I confessed to her that I had really wanted to push the jerk into the swimming pool. I knew that this same man, probably a corporate executive, well educated, even worldly by most standards, would not have been likely to regale a white woman with a dirty song in public. He would perhaps have checked his impulse by assuming that she could be somebody's wife or mother, or at least somebody who might take offense. But to him, I was just an Evita or a Maria, merely a character in his cartoon populated universe. Because of my education and my proficiency with the English language, I've acquired many mechanisms for dealing with the anger I experience. This was not true for my parents, nor is it true for the many Latin women working at menial jobs who must put up with stereotypes about our ethnic group, such as they make good domestics. This is another facet of the myth about Latin women in the United States. Its origin is simple to deduce. Work as domestics, waitressing, and factory jobs are all that's available to women with little English and few skills. The myth of the Hispanic menial has been sustained by the same media phenomenon that made Mammy from Gone with the Wind America's idea of the Black woman for generations. Maria, the housemaid or counter girl, is now indelibly etched into the national psyche. The big and little screens have presented us with the picture of the funny Hispanic maid, mispronouncing words, and cooking up a spicy storm in a shiny California kitchen. This media engendered image of the Latina in the United States has been documented by feminist Hispanic scholars who claim that such portrayals are partially responsible for the denial of opportunities for upward mobility among Latinas in professions. I have a Chicana friend working on a PhD in philosophy at a major university. She says her doctor still shakes his head in puzzled amazement at all the big words she uses. Still, since I do not wear my diplomas around my neck for all to see, I too have on occasion been sent to that kitchen where some think I obviously belong. One such incident that stayed with me, though I recognize it as a minor offense, happened on the day of my first public poetry reading. It took place in Miami on a boat restaurant where we were having lunch before the event. I was nervous and excited as I walked in with my notebook in my hand. An older woman motioned me to her table, thinking, foolish me, that she wanted me to autograph a copy of my brand new slender volume of verse. I went over. She ordered a cup of coffee from me, assuming that I was the waitress. Easy enough to mistake my poems for menus, I suppose. I know that it wasn't an intentional act of cruelty, yet of all the good things that happened that day, I remember that scene most clearly, because it reminded me of what I had to overcome before anyone would take me seriously. In retrospect, I understand that my anger gave my reading fire, that I have almost always taken doubts in my abilities as a challenge, and that the result is most times a feeling of satisfaction at having won a convert, when I see the cold appraising eyes warm to my words, the body language change, the smile that indicates that I've opened some avenue for communication. That day, I read to that woman, and her lowered eyes told me that she was embarrassed at her little faux pas. And when I willed her to look up at me, it was my victory, and she graciously allowed me to punish her with my full attention. We shook hands at the end of the reading, and I never saw her again. She has probably forgotten the whole thing, but maybe not. Yet I'm one of the lucky ones. My parents made it possible for me to acquire a stronger footing in the mainstream culture by giving me the chance at an education. And books and art have saved me from the harsher forms of ethnic and racial prejudice that many of my Hispanic compañeras have had to endure. I travel a lot around the United States, reading from my books of poetry and my novel, and the reception I most often receive is one of positive interest by people who want to know more about my culture. There are, however, thousands of Latinas without the privilege of an education or the entry into society that I have. For them, life is a struggle against the misconceptions perpetuated by the myth of the Latina as whore, domestic, or criminal. We cannot change this by legislating the way people look at us. The transformation, as I see it, has to occur at a much more individual level. My personal goal in my public life is to try to replace the old pervasive stereotypes and myths about Latinas with a much more interesting set of realities. Every time I give a reading, I hope the stories I tell, the dreams and fears I examine in my work, can achieve some universal truth which will get my audience past the particulars of my skin color, my accent, or my clothes. I once wrote a poem in which I called us Latinas God's brown daughters. This poem is really a prayer of sorts. offered upward, but also through the human to human channel of art outward. It is a prayer for communication and for respect. In it, Latin women pray in Spanish to an Anglo god with a Jewish heritage, and they are fervently hoping that if not omnipotent, at least he be bilingual. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just check that email because it's about the lockdown drill. Okay, well, it might be rescheduled. Oh well.
We're all safe.
You guys are all safe. I don't know if I'm safe, but oof. Oh yes, I just killed a gnat. I feel so victorious.
So maybe you're the reason we're in lockdown, you murderer. No,
I
I'm
guess
just kidding.
so. That could, although I'm probably not the only one. I don't know what the deal is, but like several of us upstairs have had so many gnats in our rooms lately. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so this is a good example of a memoir. It's not just focused on like one specific area of time. It's not like just about her childhood, but it's more focused around an event or an idea. She gives all of these examples of times when people's misconceptions about Latin women in America have caused her to feel uncomfortable or like prejudice against. And so even though it takes place over, you know, a bigger span of time than a lot of memoirs would, it is still focused on this particular topic. And there's definitely something kind of bigger that you can take away from it. She's obviously not just writing because she was like, oh, I want to get out all my frustrations about being prejudiced against. She's trying to get people to see that maybe there are some stereotypes that we have that we don't even necessarily think about, but that which are not fair to the people that they're about. Which I think is, you know, a good point. Before I read this, which it's been a few years since I read it for the first time now, but I remember thinking like, oh, I didn't really think about this being a stereotype, but clearly, like now that you say it, yeah, I do see that. The thing about like how on TV you'll see like kind of a quirky, funny Latina housekeeper who like mispronounces words and stuff, but it's just like really funny. I'm like, you're right. That is actually like a stereotype that we see a lot in entertainment. But I just never really like thought about it before. So we're gonna just kind of walk through the soapstone things together. You're not turning anything in for this. Where is it? Here we go. So first of all, what do we know about this speaker? Anything that we know, who she is, age, gender, class, education, anything. What do we know about her?
She's a woman.
She is a woman for sure. What else?
She had a pretty good education about poetry.
Yes, it mentioned several times that she's well educated. And yeah, like clearly she's a writer, so she's got a background in poetry. She brings that up a few times. She's a published author.
She was brought up Catholic.
She was brought up Catholic, yeah, which seems to have played a significant role. The big main one, of course, in the title, The Myth of the Latin Woman, she is of Latin descent. She's Puerto Rican, actually, specifically. And obviously a lot of those qualities have to do with her message and what she's actually trying to get across and the credibility that she has to talk about it. It'll be very different if I, as a white woman who was raised Baptist, tried to write about the myth of the Latin woman. Like I could write about things that I've seen, but it wouldn't be my personal experience. Showing that she grew up like in a Latina community, and most things in her life, like with her family and events that she went to and everything, how those were focused around the Latin community, that gives her all the credibility she needs to be able to talk about this. What about occasion? Time and place of the piece, anything that prompted the writing, any context we can get.
Well, it's sort of like a lifespan sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not one specific moment in time that this is focused around. as far as context, if you were filling out the soapstone for this, one of the questions is, what is the current situation that prompted the writing? And it seems like it's kind of a recurrent situation.
Yeah, the sexism that she sees when she's in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Or when she's in America and sees
Right.
reacting to Puerto Ricans. Yeah. I was so shocked actually by like the guy who just like dropped down and started like singing to her and called her Evita or whatever, and then like made up a dirty song about her. I kind of feel like that wouldn't fly in this day and age. I don't know when this was written, but I feel like that's not something we'd really put up with anymore. Yeah, I don't know when this was written. I was trying to find it, but I don't know. Yeah, so I think maybe it's just a matter of her like getting fed up with this and like wanting to call attention to it. I think she actually is like very patient about it. She's not or at least in her writing, she's not as mad as some people might be about this kind of thing. But I feel like she's very patient and reasonable about it. She's just trying to call attention to it and show people that maybe you don't always see the stereotypes that are being thrown around, and maybe you don't notice these things, but the people who are affected by it definitely notice. Do you think this is the A for audience? Do you think that this is directed at any specific person or group of people, or who do you think it's supposed to be for?
Probably like Americans, I'd guess.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a lot for men because it spends a lot of time talking about sexism rather than racism.
Yeah, for sure. I think y'all are both right. Americans who might not just pick up on this stuff or like not think about it when they see it or even engage in it. And specifically men, because yeah, like most of her examples were men somehow being sexist towards her. I don't think it has to be just for men because, like I said, before I read this for the first time, I didn't necessarily think about all these things. And obviously, it's something that she wants to draw attention to. She wants us to recognize when we see it happening. So I think, yes, it's very targeted towards men, but kind of all Americans. And I've had people in the past also say, maybe she's writing it partially for other Latina women just to sort of show that this happens to her too. They're not alone. Like this is something that is a real problem that they can probably identify with. Okay, the next one is purpose. I feel like we've kind of talked around this a little bit anyway, but what is the purpose? Why did she write this? What would be the main message she's trying to get across?
That people need to stop mistreating women.
Yeah.
Latin women.
Yeah, that people need to stop mistreating women, Latin women specifically. Anything else?
The stereotypes surrounding that too.
Yeah, I think so. Just to sort of be aware of these stereotypes and try to stop perpetuating them as much as we can. I think that the second S on SOAPStone is the easiest one. What's the subject? And I think we've already kind of talked about that. Just how Latin women are treated in America, the stereotypes that exist, the things that they have to go through. One of the questions is how the author presents the subject. Like, does he introduce it immediately, or do you have to make an inference about it? I actually kind of love the way that she introduces this because she does start out with an anecdote that shows the point she's going to make, but she tells the story first and kind of like gets us involved, and then here's the point of the story I just told you, and here's a bunch of other examples of how this is true in my life and how I've seen this. So I like the way that she introduces that, and I think it's really effective. As far as tone, do you like, what's her attitude? Do you think she's more emotional, objective? What kind of attitude does she have? Nobody? One thing that I said a minute ago was that I feel like she's actually pretty patient. And even though it's not,
Yeah.
we can't say that it's objective because she is talking about her own experiences, but it is fairly like, it's not emotional. I feel like she's just kind of telling, like, these are the things that I've been through. I want to draw awareness to it.
Yeah, like patient, explanatory or something.
Yeah, I think so. Explanatory is a good word. I think that it's definitely intentional. She said something at one point about how Latin women are perceived as being like spitfires, basically. Like they have a lot of, like, they have hot tempers, they're like kind of spicy. And I feel like she's kind of playing against that because that, I mean, that is a stereotype for sure. Like you hear on TV and movies and everything about like the Latin temper. And I think she's kind of disproving that, or at least kind of pushing back against it, that this is something that she could get really heated about. It's clearly really affected her, but she's just maintaining like a cool sort of detached tone about it. The other questions on the tone, which I almost feel like should have their own category because they're not exactly related to tone, but anything about details, diction, imagery, any of that stuff that helps reflect the tone. Sorry, I just got a concerning email. I don't know that this particularly helps reflect the tone, but I feel like she gave a lot of examples of what she was talking about, like particularly with the clothes that she wears, or like the clothes that she was expected to wear that her friends wore for different situations. It really helped to kind of drive that point home and give us an illustration of what that looks like. Okay, I think that's it. Next week, we're going to read another one that is very different from this. It's actually like pretty funny. Not that there's no humor in this one, but the other one is like a comedy writer. He's intended to be funny, and compare them and see how they're like really different forms of memoirs. We might start reading a book next week. I don't have everything planned out for this class just yet. I think that's it though. Anything for the good of the group before I let y'all go?
So are we turning in a soapstone, or was it just a discussion?
Just discussion. Okay, well, I'm gonna let y'all go then, and I hope y'all have a nice weekend. Stay healthy, and I'll see you Monday.